Hi everyone. I'm going to be talking about Thomas Aquinas. He was a medieval theologian and a philosopher. Okay, he's known for his synthesis of Aristotelian philosophy and Christian doctrine. Basically, just to kind of simplify, it's basically a fusion of the liberal arts with Christian doctrine. And part of the Aristotelian philosophy that he used, Aristotle was raised in, well, I should say he did a lot of his training in the intellectual systems of Greece and Rome. And it basically focused on the liberal arts there. But for Aristotle in particular, he had a particular interest in reason. And he believed that reasoning was a necessary process for cultivating human excellence. That was his belief, so that was the foundation of Aristotle. And for Aquinas, even though he believed in reasoning also, but he also believed in the soul. So there was a spiritual aspect to his interpretation of reasoning, or his perspective on reasoning. And so what Aquinas did was he studied the works of Aristotle, and it resulted in something called the Summa Theologiae. And as a result of that is when he came up with the synthesis of the two things that I just mentioned to you, which is the Aristotelian philosophy and the Christian doctrine. So these two things were fused, and they were eventually used and became a part of his educational philosophy known as Thomism. And that's what I'm going to be speaking about, his educational philosophy of Thomism. And so Thomism was a dualistic approach to teaching that he used based on the synthesis that he had compiled from the Summa Theologiae. And if you notice, that particular synthesis or curriculum is still being used today, especially in most of the Roman Catholic colleges and universities. They still use that particular university. Not only Catholic schools, but also many other schools use that curriculum as well. So it had quite a bit of staying power. As a matter of fact, Aquinas was known as the angelic doctor by many Catholics. Okay, because his method of teaching is still being used today as well. That was part of the Summa Theologiae also, was to help train and show the others who were there to learn how to teach. And what I liked about Aquinas was that he was a teacher himself. He was actually in the classroom for approximately 23 years. Okay, so he was pretty in depth at figuring out what works. And some of the things that he took into account, one of his first principles was that you meet the student where they are intellectually, and you work with them from there. Sounds familiar? Sort of like our differentiated teaching today. It's basically the same concept that he applied. Um, he was also a proponent of structure and discipline, which I am of also. Um, I'm a big proponent of having effective classroom management, and the reason I'm such a big proponent of that is because if you don't have that, you're going to be ineffective when it comes to teaching and when it comes to your students learning anything. So those things are key. He also emphasized that when you're talking to or you're teaching your students, make sure they understand what it is that you are trying to convey. It's very important that they understand. Okay, otherwise, really, it just defeats the purpose. So he emphasized that you contemplate, which for us today in our terms would be prep time. So make sure you prepare well for your lessons. Include analogies, as he mentioned, to help illustrate the point, to get things across. So he really comes across as really as a teacher, not just a philosopher, but as an actual teacher who's been in that classroom and can share some really great strategies that you can use that would actually be effective. So I was very impressed by Aquinas. Uh, the in-depthness that he showed when he was writing the Summa Theologia. He actually went over all of the works of Aristotle to come to culminate with the synthesis that he came out with, and which, as I said, is still being used today. And he thought it was very important that students have the liberal arts infused with their Christian doctrine, because he felt that it made them more well-rounded, and it also added to helped in the objective of reaching academic excellence as well. And that's all I have to say about Aquinas. He still impacts his philosophy, his educational philosophy is still being used today as we speak, and I'm quite sure it will continue to be used. So I wish all of you the best in your studies. I know some of you are probably be almost done. Me, I'm really just beginning. This is just my second semester, but I wish you guys all the best. Bye.